In this video, I'm going to show you by far the quickest, easiest, and most accurate way to radius a fingerboard. Can you guess what way? Hi, so there's many different ways to radius a fingerboard. They're all pretty annoying. I've done various ways. I've used a plane to plane the radius in. I've used sanding coils to sand the radius in. I've used a card scraper. And I've even used a suction jig which swung the fingerboard in a radius over a belt sander. And I've done all those things when the fingerboard is off the instrument or neck and after it's been finished. But I've got a new way, and it's the best way. It's the easiest way and it's the quickest way. And that is with the fretboard radiusing jig by Blockery. It's a 3D printed radiusing jig which runs along a base, and the router sits on the top here and it goes over some radiused coils, and you basically route the radius lengthways into the fingerboard. It's way easier and quicker. So the fingerboard is ready to be glued onto the neck. This is a bound fingerboard of Cam ebony from StewMac. It's going to go with this 12 fret 00 ebony torrefied spruce. Beautiful instrument. I can't wait to string it up. The final thing is to radius it, and I really do recommend radiusing fingerboards before you finish the guitar, and it's also radius them before you stick these onto a neck, because if you stick this on here, I've got 6 inches at the end here of this 12 fret guitar that is unsupported, so really easy to not get the radius correct on that. So the options are either do it now or after the instrument has been finished and the neck has been glued on, but you run the risk of building up heat when you're sanding and planing or doing whatever to get the radius, and this is just fraught with disaster, so don't do that. Do it at this stage. The last thing I do before I glue the fingerboard on is to radius it. Alright, so let me just walk you through what you get when you buy the Blockery fretboard radius jig. So this is how it comes. This is one part of it, actually 1/3 of it. This is the carriage which holds the router, and there are different colored holes in this, and they correspond to different brands of routers. And so the yellow one is for DeWalt, the red holes are for Milwaukee, the green are for Ryobi and Rigid, the blue is for Makita, and the black holes are for Bosch. Because I have all the other routers, I bought a Bosch specifically to dedicate to this. The only thing I really care about in a router needs to have a soft start. Also, it has to have a really easy to adjust height system. It depends if it's a dedicated router for one specific job where you're not going in and out, then you don't have to. You set it and forget it. But this has quite an easy little thumb screw thing that will be easy to change the depth of it. So when you buy this, you have an option to get 2 widths. This is the version that you can route fingerboards up to 3 inches wide, so that's all I'll ever be doing. Guitar fingerboards are like 2.5 inches at most. They've got a second version which is a 5-inch wide version. So if you're doing 6-string basses or something, or 7-string basses, or some weird fan fret thing, you might want to get the 5-inch bass. The 3-inch one at the moment, this is December 2024, they're $110, and the 5-inch one is $135. When you buy this, you get to choose 2 radiuses, just choose the ones you want. Because I'm only making guitars, I opted for the 12-inch and the 16-inch, and check their website for all the different varieties. They basically offer 7.25 radius up to 20-inch and flat, and they also have custom radiuses. If you're building 2 is probably enough. Like guitars, I've never done anything other than 12 and 16. I do 16 on guitars and 12 on ukuleles, because a 12 on a ukulele feels like a 16 does on a guitar, just because it's shorter. You need, if I do a 16 on a thinner fingerboard, it feels way more flat than it should. But of course, if you're making electrics, then get a tighter radius or whatever you want. So that's the product, and I'm going to show you another Blockery product later on. But to hold this, you do need to build a very simple base for this to ride. So there's no slop here. So this is 36 inches long, and the base is just 3/4 inch plywood, just some scrap I had. This middle part here, which is the important part, it's made up of one 3/4 inch bit of MDF, and to that I glued another piece of 1/2 inch MDF. What those measurements add up to when you use a industry standard 1/4 inch thick fingerboard. So with the 1/4 inch thick fingerboard plus the 1/2 inch and 3/4 inch, that brings this from here, which is the bottom of the base, or the riding surface of the base, to the top of the fingerboard is about 1.5 inches. That's an important measurement, because if it's different than that, the actual strict radius that you get will be different from the inserts that you get. It's some math stuff, I don't know. All you got to do is make sure that the height of your fingerboard to the base here, where the bearings roll on, is 1.5 inches. And this needs to be 4.5 inches wide. And if you've got the wider version of this jig, then the center part of the base, the MDF, needs to be 6.5 inches wide instead of 4.5 inches. So it's a really easy thing to make. You don't have to make a Brazilian rosewood inlaid thing. It just has to work, you know. Another thing, put a center line down it. I'll put a center line on this fingerboard, and that will be double-sided taped to that center line. You may have noticed that this is way longer than a typical fingerboard. This is a short scale fingerboard, so a long scale would be maybe 1 inch longer, so here. But all in all, it's 10 inches longer on either side. The reason for that is, if you think about it, that's the center of this, where the router bit is. And if I have this in the center, I have to take the center of the router bit, or the router bit, a little bit past, so that is there. So really I only have well, if it was a long scale, I've got 4 inches here, and the same on the other end. Just err on the side of too long. 36 inches seems to be totally fine for a short and long scale guitar fingerboard. If you're doing basses, just figure it out. I don't know how long a bass fingerboard is, but you just want to make sure that you've got enough track here, or bass, for the tracks to ride on, so it doesn't fall off when you're routing. So just, think ahead a little bit when you're cutting this. The router bit that you need to buy for your router is a straight cut 2-flute 1/4 inch shank. The Whiteside branded router part number is 1023. And on their website, String Blockery make a point of saying that a straight cut bit is far better than a spiral cut bit. So it's just a simple 3/8 wide 1/4 inch shank bit, and the cutting length is 1 1/4, and the overall length is 2 3/4. And I'll leave a link for that in the description. You can get it on Amazon. And of course, I'll leave a link to the String Blockery website. There's one other thing, which is what I look for in a router, and that is a light, or an LED, that comes on in here. My DeWalt router has that, but this doesn't. It's not a game changer, but I actually knew that when I bought this, but I just wanted to have a Bosch Colt. It's the early 2000s Luthier's router, I think, because LMI used to sell them, or Stumac. If I was to do this again, I would probably buy the DeWalt router, because it's got a soft start, the height adjustment is really easy, and it's got a really strong LED light. But this was, I think I got this for $80 new, and the DeWalt is about 140 or 50 or something, and that's totally fine. So, but if you got an extra $60 to spend, get the DeWalt. Double-side tape. Stumac sells some laminating adhesive double-side tape. There's another brand, or another type, and it's a weird one that you wouldn't know about, and I didn't until a friend of mine told me about it. I think it's called golfing tape, but everyone who uses it, who's in the Luth group, call it Danny West tape, because Danny West was the one who found out how good this stuff is. And I think they use it to wrap around golf club handles to get that outer layer on. I don't know what it is, vinyl, leather or something. But everyone in the Luth group, we just refer to this as Danny West tape. It's really good, really strong, and it's cheap. And all those things funnily enough, sum up Danny West. He's a friend of mine. Oh, hello. Did you like and subscribe? Well, if you like this video, please consider doing so. Cheers. And because we're routing, you don't want to muck around. You don't want to just dab a few on. You want to get this really good. So that's one. And the second piece, you don't want any air bubbles or anything weird in it. You just want this to be a nice, clean, flat surface. Any discrepancy in the flatness will result in not well radiused fingerboard top. So you want the bottom of the fingerboard to be nice and flat, and you also want this surface to be nice and flat. And when I made this, I sanded it to 220, then I applied shellac to it and then sanded it all again, so it's really nice. You do want this to be reasonably flat. You don't want to clamp down on a curved surface, even though technically the rail will ride against the curved surface, and this will be curved as well, so it should all be even, but try and keep it flat as possible. This is actually not totally flat. It's probably 64th out, but that's totally fine. It's going to get a center line on this. Handy tool by Ken Timms, but he doesn't make them anymore, so don't bother him or me asking about where to get one. I tried to get Stu Mac to make one of those, or to take up the making of them, but apparently that is too hard to make. Really, if that center line on the fingerboard is very slightly out, it doesn't matter, because what we're going to do is come back in with this and radius it with a radiusing block. This is one that is also 3D printed by you-know-who. String Blockery. There's going to be a machined surface, and it's going to have to be cleaned up with a radius. While I've got these out, this is the 16. I've also got the 12, but they're cool. These are the 2 3/4 wide ones for guitars. These are the 3.5 inch wide for big basses and things, or maybe a fan fret or something. And they've got a really nice solid center kind of reinforcement wall on the inside. They're really fat. They're light and they're strong. So yeah, it's good. In the past, I've used the maple ones from Stu Mac and LMI, and I've got a metal one from Amazon somewhere. These are really good. These ones are $12 to $17, the 2 3/4 inch ones, and the 3.5 inch wide ones are $15 to $23 each. The reason for the differences in the range of prices, you can get them in 4 inches, 8 inches, and 10 inches. This one looks like an 8 incher to me, which is what she said. So the customer wants a 16 inch radius on this. There is some set screws, so just tighten them up. So I'll just take this double-sided tape, Danny West tape off. So this doesn't have to be in the middle. Put it there, but I'm gonna put it middle-ish. Nice. Another thing I forgot to mention, or I did mention flat, but I didn't really allude to what else it could do. String Blockery sell flat versions of this. I guess you could just use it without these and it's pretty flat, but you'd probably have to adjust the height of the route a bit. But you could surface level a fingerboard flat with this if you didn't have a sander. You could just, run a flat router over it. Just another trick up your sleeve. To attach whatever router brand that you get to this, the String Blockery comes with 4 screws, which they're the perfect length to go through this. Okay, so I'm just going to show you how to put this router on. It's pretty self-explanatory, but I'll just take the plastic part off. So the black holes, they're a little bit offset. These 2 holes here are a little bit closer to the edge than these holes, so just make sure you're centering this correctly. So when you choose the correct orientation for whatever router you have, the center of the router, or the base of the router, will be centered in the center of the hole in the jig. The other possible way to do it is that way, but if I line the holes up again, you'll see the problem. So the base is not centered anymore. It's way over here, so it has to be over there. That's an excellent sign that they've thought ahead of everything. I'm just going to put the wider part down here because I'm going to clamp this to the end of my bench just for easier viewing. And I did think about clamping when I decided on how long to make this. So again, 36 inches is very appropriate. I clamped this with the wider end of the fingerboard at the end of the bench because this will be my sort of reference area where I'll be looking through here just to see what's going on. The next part is the easiest / scariest part. You just want to position the router carriage. I'd call this the carriage for lack of a better word, and this the base of the jig. The center of the radius inserts has a center line, and this has a center line here. So align that, and you just want to drop the router bit down so the router bit is just not touching the surface. So you just have to make sure the router bit is extended out far enough to hit the top of the fingerboard, and then just use the fine adjustment to clear that. I have to say this fine adjustment on the Bosch really sucks. I don't like it at all. Luckily it's kind of easier just to fine tune it with this. So I've got it probably like a 64th up from the center on the middle of the fingerboard. So what happens now, basically, put the cord around this side, is you can't run it this way and work up the fingerboard. I'm going to have to do one half of the fingerboard first. So go down the center, move it over, and just do that. Here we go. Just make sure you've got a clear view under here. I might just have a torch ready and put that down like that just to make sure that it's I'm getting a nice view down there. But I just want to stay on center and work all the way down, move it over, back that way, and keep going. So I have done all the nut end, but I wanted to show you what this looks like when you've completed the width of the nut end, but not the rest. So that's been touched here, the very edge, but as you go up, as the fingerboard widens, you can see I've got another 2 passes to go, maybe 3, and then I haven't done this side yet. So I'm just taking this very easily, probably under 1/8 of an inch at a time, just moving it over and just holding it steady with my hands and fingers. There's no rush, but you can see if I had done a couple more passes, then half of it would be done already. Okay, so that side is done. You can see there's no ledge or anything. It's nice. What I might do though is just make the router bit just a tiny bit deeper, because the radius doesn't really start until 1/4 of an inch in from the center line. But that was a really nice first pass. The amount of trouble that this saves in regard to work that is just horrible, dusty, ebony dust going everywhere, it's a no-brainer. Oh, by the way, with the base, just make sure that you're cleaning out the debris when you've got ball bearings. If it's not absolutely perfect, you can feel every little bump and speck of dust. So if you're making a couple of passes, just clean it out. It will make it a little bit smoother. I kind of vaguely did that, and I still got a 99% perfect job, so it's not a big deal, obviously. Here we go for the treble side of the fingerboard. So once you've done each side, you can rock it like this, and that will just clean up anything. I might just give it a quick go. You just have to make sure that the rollers, the ball bearings, stay firmly attached. You don't want this to ride up or anything. I've got my radius gauge, and what I thought was going to be a problem is not, because remember how I said that the radius didn't appear to start until like 1/4 of an inch out from the center line? When I put a radius gauge on, it's so close that once I get these involved, it's going to be just a couple of swipes and it's going to have a perfect radius. So that did amazing job just in one pass, which I didn't actually expect that. So these are designed around the sandpaper that Stu Maxwell, the self-stick it stuff. Okay, so I'm going to take advantage of the fingerboard being stuck down still, because it's way easier. Now, at this stage, before you glue it all on to the neck and the neck to the body and all that, it doesn't actually have to be perfect, because for every guitar I've ever made, which is, I've made like 105 instruments myself, and at Gillet Guitars I made probably double that, or helped with making Gillet guitars and student guitars and stuff. Once you glue the neck to the body and bolt it on or whatever, there's always going to be a slight hump at the body joint, which has to be re-finessed. So this don't bother taking the fingerboard to 1200 or whatever at this stage. It only needs like 80. I might take it to 120, but that's it. You'll see how quickly this becomes perfect. That's it. There is some little bits that I haven't touched, but I know I'm going to have to re-finesse this the moment before I fret, basically. And if you really wanted to, you could just drop this down another 5 thou, and all that would be removed. I have enough of these to go through each grit up to like 600, and then I just hand sand it with a block after 600, because it's not really removing enough wood to worry about it not being in a radiused core like this. So probably want to buy 4 or 5 of these. So I was just looking at the String Blockery website, and they've got a kind of different deals and bundles and stuff, which saves money, which I didn't realize. They've got a Luthier's bundle. You get the carriage and you get 5 of these, and it's a good discounted price. They've also got a pack of 5 of these, of the 8-inch long ones, which is my favorite length, especially if you're just doing things from scratch like this. Then the 8-inch ones are a really good length to have. If you're doing repair work and stuff, you might want to buy some wooden ones and chop them in half, and you can kind of get tricky with clamping and stuff like that. The wooden ones with the flat top are better for clamping than these 3D printed ones, for sure. Whether you're a builder or repairer, I'm both, you'll pick up different types, different lengths, 3D printed, maple, aluminum or metal. I've also got these really long ones from Skyscraper. Really good, really expensive, but when you need one, you need one. So you pick up all the tools eventually. But if you're getting into it, or you're doing lots of fingerboard stuff, this is fantastic. Also at this stage, you could drill dots into the fingerboard, and take advantage of it being double side taped down to sand it. But it's so easy to do that later on. I'm just going to pull this off now and glue it to the neck. Another thing which is really good about this system over planing or scraping and hand sanding, what happens when you hand sand or use hand tools, it's very easy to, especially what I was doing here, just by default, even if I'm attempting to not do what I know happens, is I put more pressure on this side. Might be easier to see with this. See that rocking? It's really, really, really difficult to sand along a fingerboard and not put uneven pressure on one side or the other. When I look down the end of the fingerboard, I often see that on the treble side, if I'm sanding this way, the nut here, I've slowly taken off a little bit more on this side. And I regularly check. Well, I used to regularly check. I'm not going to have to anymore, because I will never do that again. Because this, just by default, does everything exactly equally, assuming that you've got the center line of the fingerboard on the center line of the carriage or the base. The hardest part is getting the fingerboard off after using Danny West tape, but all good. So I just took the fingerboard off, and I thought I'd measure each corner. Remember, I was saying that it's really difficult to evenly distribute the pressure when you're hand sanding. So this corner is 241, and this corner is, wow, 241. Let me do it at the fret end. 223 and 221. Man, that is accurate. That is accurate. That's just buy one of these. Just buy one, seriously. By the way, I'm not getting any kickbacks. If you buy one, I'm not getting any money. I'm just telling you, that thing's awesome. So thank you for watching. I hope that was of interest too. If you are making a lot of guitars or even ukuleles with, well, any instrument with any radius fingerboard, consider getting one of these. It does save a lot of time and energy, and radiusing fingerboard, no one likes it. It's kind of like driving the bus when you're radiusing the back and the top and that. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this was helpful, and see you next time. I'm Beau Hannam. Bye.